The bubble nobody talks about. Why your wealth is in danger.
All right, let us dive headfirst into a topic many would rather ignore, perhaps hoping it simply disappears if nobody mentions its name too loudly. We are talking about the whispers, the uneasy feelings, the undeniable data points suggesting that the financial markets, once again, might be inflating a rather large, precarious bubble. This is not about alarmism for its own sake, but rather an invitation to scrutinize the current economic landscape with a healthy dose of cynicism and an unwavering commitment to reality. Because while optimism is a lovely trait, especially on a Tuesday, when it comes to safeguarding your wealth, a dash of well-placed skepticism might just be your most valuable asset. In this video, we are not just going to nod along with the prevailing narrative of eternal growth and boundless prosperity. Instead, we are peeling back the layers to examine the truly alarming economic indicators that many experts, pundits, and indeed a significant portion of the investing public seem perfectly content to overlook. We will connect these present-day signals to the haunting echoes of past market crashes, demonstrating just how predictably and often tragically history tends to rhyme. If you think this time it is different, prepare for a rather uncomfortable yet crucially informative reality check. Our journey will culminate in a stark contemplation of the catastrophic consequences that invariably follow when these financial bubbles burst, impacting not just portfolios, but livelihoods and entire economies. However, fear not, for this is not merely a prophecy of doom. We will also equip you with actionable insights and time-tested strategies designed to safeguard your wealth amidst escalating uncertainty. Prepare to challenge assumptions, question narratives, and arm yourself with the knowledge necessary to navigate what could be the next significant financial upheaval. Your financial future might just depend on it.
Is this the next financial bubble in the making?
Allow us to entertain a rather uncomfortable yet undeniably pertinent question. Is this current economic panorama merely a temporary blip? Or are we with astonishingly predictable human folly, inflating another colossal financial bubble? It is a query many are either too busy to consider, too optimistic to acknowledge, or perhaps too invested to truly confront. Yet, ignoring it feels akin to watching a slow-motion train wreck, while politely sipping tea and complimenting the conductor's hat. For those perhaps unfamiliar with the charming mechanics of a financial bubble, allow for a brief, albeit cynical, primer. Imagine a speculative market where asset prices become fundamentally detached from their intrinsic value, driven by rampant speculation, herd mentality, and an infectious, almost religious belief in new paradigms, a phrase often preceding economic carnage. These prices ascend to dizzying, unsustainable heights. Everyone becomes an instant genius investor, eager to brag about their paper gains, convinced that gravity this time has simply been repealed. Then, with the abruptness of a poorly executed magic trick, confidence evaporates, selling frenzies ensue, and the entire precarious edifice collapses, often leaving behind a trail of devastated portfolios and shattered dreams. It is an economic phenomenon that repeats with the regularity of fashion trends. It consistently catches a significant portion of the population completely off guard. The enduring human capacity for collective amnesia, particularly concerning financial history, is truly a marvel. One might naturally inquire with a healthy dose of skepticism why such a topic warrants urgent consideration now. The answer, dear viewer, lies in the remarkably consistent echoes from the past. Throughout history, from the Dutch tulip mania to the dot-com bust, and more recently, the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis, the script, while featuring different actors and props, retains its fundamental narrative. There are always whispers of this time it is different. Always new technologies or market structures presented as immutable shields against traditional economic cycles. There is always an intoxicating cocktail of easy money, cheap credit, and an almost pathological aversion to missing out on perceived guaranteed riches. These elements create a powerful, almost hypnotic, siren call that lures even the most prudent individuals into speculative excesses. When asset prices surge well beyond historical averages, when retail investors abandon caution for aggressive high-risk plays, and when commentators declare the old rules obsolete, it is not merely exuberance, it is often the soundtrack of an impending unraveling. We observe these very familiar patterns unfolding before our collective eyes, painted across various market sectors, seemingly unheeded by the broader narrative. The silence, ironically, is deafening. Consider the pervasive nature of certain market dynamics today. Valuations in specific sectors have reached stratospheric levels, justified by narratives that often prioritize future potential over current profitability or even revenue. The sheer velocity of some asset appreciation defies conventional analysis, relying instead on a boundless wellspring of optimism and the implicit assumption of an ever-expanding pool of greater fools. Low interest rates, once perceived as a boon for growth, have simultaneously fueled an insatiable hunt for yield, pushing capital into increasingly risky ventures. Companies with minimal earnings or even negative cash flow command valuations traditionally reserved for established, highly profitable enterprises. This phenomenon is not merely an isolated incident. It is a widespread condition, permeating different layers of the financial ecosystem. The current environment, with its unique blend of technological disruption and unprecedented monetary policy, certainly presents novel aspects. Yet the underlying human drivers of speculative frenzies remain stubbornly constant. The real irony, and perhaps the most acidic point, is that many of the warning signs are not hidden. They are broadcast, discussed, and even debated, yet consistently rationalized away. The media, often complicit in generating hype, occasionally offers cautionary tales only to quickly pivot back to celebrating new peaks and record-breaking returns. Financial pundits, eager to maintain relevance, find novel ways to justify seemingly irrational price movements. Average individuals, witnessing their neighbors or colleagues amass fortunes on seemingly audacious bets, succumb to the fear of missing out, throwing caution and due diligence to the wind. It is an intoxicating blend of collective delusion, fueled by readily available information that paradoxically often leads to poorer decision-making. The ability to discern genuine value from speculative froth becomes increasingly challenging when everyone around you is getting rich. So, as we navigate this rather peculiar economic landscape, the question lingers. Are we merely on the cusp of another cyclical correction? Or are we, with a remarkable lack of self-awareness, laying the groundwork for something far more significant? The illusion of safety, often provided by sustained upward trends, can be a dangerous sedative. Understanding these underlying mechanisms, recognizing the historical precedents, and maintaining a healthy dose of skepticism are not simply academic exercises. They are essential survival tools in markets increasingly driven by narratives and momentum rather than fundamental value. The journey to financial prudence begins with an honest acknowledgement of what might be brewing beneath the surface.
Unpacking the alarming economic indicators today.
Right then, having flirted with the uncomfortable notion of a brewing financial bubble, it is time to drag our collective attention, perhaps unwillingly, toward the rather unsavory specifics. Let us peel back the glossy veneer of perpetual optimism and scrutinize the actual economic indicators today. Yes, those inconvenient truths that, much like an unexpected bill, are far easier to ignore until they absolutely demand your attention. This is where the rubber meets the road, or more accurately, where the illusion meets the harsh reality of cold, hard data. First on our grand tour of things everyone should be worried about, but conveniently is not, is the specter of persistent inflation. For a while, central bankers and market pundits alike cheerfully dismissed rising prices as transitory, a fleeting byproduct of pandemic-induced supply chain hiccups. Well, surprise, surprise, those hiccups have developed into a chronic cough, hacking away at purchasing power with alarming consistency. From the grocery store aisle to the gas pump, the cost of living is demonstrably higher, and it is not showing much inclination to recede gracefully. This is not merely an abstract economic concept. It is your hard-earned money buying less day after day. When the cost of everything from commodities to labor continues its upward march, it squeezes corporate margins and eats into household budgets, creating a rather unappetizing recipe for economic stagnation. Coupled with rising prices, it is a delectable dish known as stagflation, which historically speaking is about as fun as a root canal. The market's initial indifference to this fundamental erosion of value is, shall we say, a testament to its boundless capacity for self-deception. Closely linked and equally unsettling are the swiftly rising interest rates. For over a decade, we luxuriated in an era of effectively free money. Borrowing was cheap, debt was plentiful, and investment decisions often felt less about sound fundamentals and more about who could leverage themselves most aggressively. That party, much to the chagrin of serial borrowers and speculative enterprises, is unequivocally over. Central banks, jolted awake by the inflation monster they perhaps underestimated, are now aggressively tightening monetary policy. What does this mean? It means borrowing costs for everything like mortgages, car loans, corporate expansion are climbing. This has a chilling effect on asset valuations, particularly for growth stocks whose lofty prices were predicated on abundant, cheap capital for future expansion. When the cost of capital skyrockets, the present value of those distant promised profits shrinks dramatically. The easy money gravy train has derailed, and suddenly, the financial landscape looks a lot more like a barren desert than a lush oasis. Those who built their castles on sand, financed by essentially zero-cost borrowing, are now feeling the foundation shift. Then we arrive at the utterly bewildering world of asset valuations. Stocks, real estate, and even certain digital assets have, in many instances, entered what can only be described as a realm of pure fantasy. Price-earnings ratios, once a foundational metric for assessing value, are in many sectors stretched to historical extremes. It's justified only by the most optimistic, almost utopian growth projections. Housing markets in numerous regions have seen prices surge far beyond what average incomes can reasonably support. It's creating a precarious affordability crisis that feels uncannily reminiscent of, well, the greater fool theory seems to be operating at peak efficiency, with every buyer convinced there will always be a more naive soul willing to pay an even higher price. This speculative fervor, decoupled from underlying economic realities, represents a massive overhang. When assets are priced for perfection, any deviation from that ideal of a slight dip in earnings, a marginal rise in unemployment, an unexpected geopolitical tremor can trigger a swift and brutal repricing. It is not healthy. It is a market on an adrenaline rush, convinced it is invincible. Let us not overlook the elephant in the room: debt saturation. Governments, corporations, and even consumers are burdened by historically high levels of debt. While low interest rates made this debt manageable, rising rates are now transforming a comfortable blanket into a suffocating weight. Corporations with significant leverage face higher servicing costs, impacting profitability and solvency. Governments already strained by pandemic spending find their fiscal flexibility severely curtailed. And consumers, grappling with inflation and rising interest payments, are seeing their disposable income evaporate. This mountain of debt acts as a powerful amplifier for any economic downturn. What might have once been a minor correction now threatens to trigger a cascade of defaults and financial instability. It is a precarious tightrope walk, and the winds are picking up. Finally, there is the ever-present, ever-alarming market sentiment and speculative behavior. We have witnessed the rise of meme stocks, the frenzy around certain cryptocurrencies, driven more by social media hype than fundamental utility, and a general abandonment of traditional investment wisdom in favor of high-octane, get-rich-quick schemes. Retail investors, empowered by accessible trading platforms, are often chasing narratives rather than value, displaying an almost pathological fear of missing out FOMO. This rampant speculation, often fueled by excess liquidity and a belief in a perpetually rising market, is a classic late-cycle phenomenon. It signals irrational exuberance, a collective delusion that suggests an impending reckoning. These are not isolated incidents. They are interwoven threads in a rapidly unraveling tapestry. Each indicator, while concerning on its own, gains a sinister synergy when viewed in conjunction with the others. The confluence of persistent inflation, aggressive rate hikes, astronomical asset valuations, pervasive debt, and unbridled speculation paints a picture that is, to put it mildly, deeply concerning. To ignore these alarming economic indicators today is not optimism. It is a willful blindness that could prove extraordinarily costly. The stage is set, and the uncomfortable question of whether we are heading for another financial reckoning becomes less abstract and more terrifyingly concrete.
Haunting parallels with past market crashes.
Having painstakingly cataloged the alarming economic indicators fluttering about like so many red flags in a gale, it is time for a less than comforting history lesson. For those who believe that humanity, having once tripped over its own feet, will somehow magically avoid the same sidewalk crack a second, third, or even 10th time, I present the haunting parallels with past market crashes. Because, astonishingly enough, the script for financial bubbles and their inevitable, messy demise has been remarkably consistent, differing only in the costumes and set design. The protagonist, unfortunately, remains stubbornly human folly and the plot twist. This time, it is different. Always leads to the same tragic ending. Let us begin with the universally recognized, yet perpetually ignored, the siren song of every impending crash. The phrase, "this time it is different," this innocent-sounding declaration, is not merely an opinion. It is the death knell of rational thought. The economic equivalent of claiming gravity no longer applies to your particular brand of stock certificate. From the Dutch tulip mania, where exotic flower bulbs somehow justified the price of houses, to the dot-com delirium where companies with no revenue, no profits, and merely an idea, often a profoundly bad one, commanded billion-dollar valuations, the underlying conviction was always the same. Fundamental economic principles had been suspended. The new era, the new technology, the new market structure, or the new monetary policy was supposed to shield investors from the inconvenient truths of value and sustainable growth. History, with its cruel sense of humor, consistently proves otherwise. Cast your mind back to the late 1990s, the era of the dot-com bubble. The internet was a revolutionary technology, undoubtedly transformative. But the market's response was not merely enthusiasm. It was a mass hallucination. Companies added .com to their names and watched their stock prices skyrocket. Valuation metrics were tossed out the window, placed by eyeballs or clicks. Investment strategies revolved around buying anything with a pulse and an online presence, assuming eternal growth. The retail investor, often propelled by chatroom hype and the fear of missing out on instant riches, poured savings into speculative ventures, convinced they were witnessing a new paradigm where profits were optional. Does this ring a bell? The current fervor around certain nascent technologies, the seemingly boundless valuations of unprofitable ventures, and the phenomenon of meme stocks driven by collective online exuberance bear an uncomfortable, almost carbon-coated resemblance. We are told once again that new metrics apply, that traditional analysis is obsolete. It is the same old song, just with a slightly more digital beat. Then there is the not-so-distant memory of the 2008 global financial crisis, primarily fueled by the housing bubble. Here, the parallels shift slightly, but remain equally chilling. Easy money, loose lending standards, and the widespread belief that housing prices never go down created an unsustainable surge in real estate values. People were buying properties they could ill afford, often with exotic mortgage products that disguised the true risks. Financial institutions became dangerously over-leveraged, packaging toxic assets with seemingly innocent ones, convinced of their own invincibility. When the inevitable correction began, the entire highly interconnected system threatened to unravel. Today, while the specific asset class might differ in focus, the underlying dynamics of excessive debt, inflated asset prices across various sectors, not just housing, in a pervasive sense that the Fed will always backstop us, echoes the pre-2008 complacency. The belief that certain assets are too big to fail or too important to drop is a powerful, yet ultimately destructive psychological opiate. What unites these disparate historical episodes is not just the speculative frenzy, but also the universal dismissal of clear warning signs. In each instance, sober voices raised concerns about valuations, credit quality, or unsustainable leverage. And in each instance, these voices were either ignored, ridiculed, or drowned out by the euphoric chorus of market participants convinced they had discovered the secret to eternal prosperity. The collective amnesia regarding these past lessons is not merely a quirk of human nature. It is a fundamental flaw that makes us susceptible to repeating the same expensive mistakes. We gaze at the current market, see assets priced for perfection, hear narratives of endless growth, witness retail investors diving headfirst into highly speculative plays. all while inflation gnaws at the foundation and interest rates climb, yet many still cling to the different this time delusion. The haunting part of these parallels is their predictive power. They are not merely interesting historical anecdotes. They are blueprints for financial disaster. When you see the same patterns of irrational exuberance, speculative trading by unprepared investors, asset valuations detached from any semblance of reality, and an overarching belief that the rules no longer apply, you are not just seeing history rhyme, you're seeing it prepare for an encore. To ignore these stark resemblances is not merely unwise. It is a direct invitation for your portfolio to become yet another casualty in humanity's ongoing expensive tuition in economic reality. The question is not if history will repeat, but rather who will be paying attention when it does.
The catastrophic consequences of a bursting bubble.
All right, let us shift from the academic exercise of identifying impending doom to the far more visceral, and perhaps equally entertaining, contemplation of said doom. Because if there is one thing more predictable than a financial bubble inflating, it is the utterly catastrophic, soul-crushing, and often tragically hilarious consequences when that bubble inevitably, and without so much as a polite notice, decides to burst. This is not merely an economic adjustment. It is a full-blown financial earthquake, and its tremors shake far more than just the stock market. Imagine, if you will, the serene morning after a particularly raucous party. The glitter is everywhere, the expensive champagne is spilled, and the bills are due. That, my friends, is the mercifully benign analogy for a bursting bubble. The reality is far grimmer. What begins as a gentle hiss of escaping air from overinflated asset prices rapidly devolves into a violent, deafening explosion. The once celebrated paper gains, those bragging rights at cocktail parties, evaporate faster than a politician's promise. Retirement accounts, lovingly nurtured over decades, suddenly resemble a desert landscape. The instant millionaires who gambled on speculative assets find their fortunes reduced to dust. Their dreams of early retirement replaced by the stark reality of working well past their prime, perhaps even having to pick up a second job to cover their new, more modest lifestyle. The collective sigh of relief for having avoided the fear of missing out is quickly replaced by a collective gasp of despair, as everyone realizes they simply missed the boat on solvency. The immediate aftermath within the markets is nothing short of pure, unadulterated pandemonium. Volatility, once a statistical anomaly, becomes the daily norm. Trading screens transform into chaotic canvases of red, reflecting plummeting values. Liquidity, the very lifeblood of healthy markets, suddenly dries up like a forgotten puddle in the Sahara. Institutional investors, once paragons of calculated risk, become desperate sellers, triggering a vicious cycle as their actions force prices even lower. The air thickens with fear, a palpable, suffocating fear that paralyzes decision-making and replaces rational analysis with primal panic. Trust, the invisible glue holding financial systems together, shatters. Who can you trust when the experts were just as wrong, or even more wrong, than the amateur day trader? Confidence, that delicate butterfly, takes flight, possibly never to return for a very, very long time. Beyond the trading floors and brokerage statements, the ripple effects spread relentlessly into the real economy. Businesses, having expanded aggressively on the promise of perpetual growth and cheap credit, suddenly find themselves facing a stark new reality. Consumer spending, the engine of many economies, grinds to a halt as households tighten their belts, nursing their financial wounds. Corporations, burdened by debt and facing dwindling demand, cut back on investment, halt expansion plans, and, with chilling inevitability, resort to mass layoffs. Unemployment skyrockets, transforming abstract economic statistics into real human tragedies, families struggling to make ends meet. Homes foreclosed, dreams deferred, or outright abandoned. The once vibrant job market becomes a brutal battleground where even the most qualified individuals struggle to find gainful employment. This is where the grim humor wears thin, replaced by a cold, hard ache. And let us not forget the broader societal ramifications, which are often the most insidious. A bursting bubble lays bare the uncomfortable truths about wealth inequality, exacerbating existing social divisions. Those with diversified portfolios and access to capital might weather the storm, perhaps even profiting from the wreckage, while those who were lured into speculative excesses with their life savings bear the brunt of the devastation. This fuels resentment, anger, and a deep-seated distrust in the financial system and the institutions supposedly designed to protect it. Political instability can follow, as disillusioned populations demand answers, scapegoats, and often radical change. The social fabric, already strained by economic pressures, begins to fray, leading to protests, civil unrest, and a general sense of unease that permeates every aspect of daily life. The consequences are not just financial, they are deeply human, affecting mental health, family stability, and the overall quality of life for millions. The bitter irony in all of this is that the signs were almost certainly there, plastered across headlines whispered by a few brave Cassandras, and perhaps even felt as an uneasy gnawing in the gut of anyone paying even a modicum of attention. Yet, the seductive power of easy money, the relentless fear of missing out, and the blissful ignorance of historical precedent conspired to lull a significant portion of the population into a false sense of security. When the bubble bursts, there is no gentle descent. It is a jarring, brutal awakening. The financial wreckage is immense, the economic downturn painful and prolonged, and the human cost immeasurable. So as we optimistically gaze upon the current economic landscape, with its stretched valuations and speculative fervor, remember that the catastrophic consequences are not merely theoretical constructs. They are a recurring and entirely avoidable nightmare that humanity, with its infinite wisdom, seems doomed to relive. The question is not if it will burst, but rather, how many of us will be caught utterly unprepared when it does?
How to safeguard your wealth amidst uncertainty.
So, after that delightful journey through the impending economic apocalypse and the historical blueprints of financial self-immolation, you are probably feeling one of two things. Either utterly terrified and ready to bury your life savings in the backyard, or slightly intrigued and perhaps a tad bit annoyed that I have not yet offered a magical shield against the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Fear not, dear reader, for even in the darkest corners of market mayhem, there are strategies to not merely survive, but perhaps even thrive. This is not about predicting the exact moment the sky falls. It is about building a sturdy umbrella, because while the masses are panicking, the prudent are preparing. Let us be brutally honest. There is no secret elixir, no cryptic incantation that will guarantee absolute immunity from market downturns. Anyone selling you such a thing is either a charlatan or desperately trying to offload their own speculative holdings. However, there are time-tested, boringly effective principles that the wise, or at least the less foolish, consistently employ. These are not glamorous, they will not make you an instant billionaire from a single meme stock, but they will provide a much-needed ballast when the financial seas get choppy. Your wealth, like your sanity, is worth safeguarding. First and foremost, let us discuss the unsung hero of resilient portfolios: diversification. Yes, I know. It is the advice every financial advisor drones on about, and it sounds about as exciting as watching paint dry. But there is a reason for its ubiquitous presence. Spreading your investments across different asset classes, stocks, bonds, real estate, commodities, maybe even a smidgen of alternative assets, is akin to not putting all your eggs in one highly volatile speculative basket. When one sector takes a nosedive, another might hold steady or even rise, cushioning the blow. It is the antithesis of the all-in on Bitcoin strategy that makes for thrilling YouTube videos, but often ends in tears and therapy. During a bubble, everyone piles into the same hot assets. The smart money, however, quietly diversifies, understanding that yesterday's darling can quickly become tomorrow's dumpster fire. Next up, a concept so profoundly unsexy, yet so powerfully effective, it is often ignored. Cash. Yes, plain old legal tender, sitting patiently in a savings account or a short-term high-quality bond. In a world obsessed with maximizing every penny, holding cash feels like financial heresy. But when markets are melting down, cash is king. It is dry powder, ready to seize opportunities when panic selling drives asset prices to ridiculously undervalued levels. While others are forced to sell their holdings at a loss to meet obligations, you, with your delightful war chest of liquidity, can be buying quality assets for pennies on the dollar. It is the ultimate contrarian move, requiring patience and a strong stomach. but it is one of the most effective ways to not just survive, but to profit from market downturns. Then, there is the matter of debt reduction, specifically high-interest, consumer debt. During periods of economic expansion and low interest rates, debt feels like a convenient tool. But when the bubble bursts and jobs become scarce and interest rates rise, that debt transforms into an anvil around your neck. Paying down credit cards, personal loans, and even strategically tackling mortgages frees up cash flow and reduces your financial vulnerability. It is about building a fortress around your personal finances so that external shocks are less likely to breach your walls. This is not the stuff of get-rich-quick schemes. It is the bedrock of enduring financial security. Furthermore, invest in yourself through continuous learning and due diligence. The greatest asset you possess is your intellect and your ability to adapt. Understand what you are investing in. Do not chase headlines or follow the crowd blindly, especially when the crowd is frothing at the mouth over the latest sure thing. If you cannot articulate why an asset is valuable or how it generates returns, you are not investing, you are gambling. And while gambling can be fun at the casino, it is a ruinous strategy for your life savings. Develop a critical eye, question narratives, and seek out reputable, unbiased sources of information. This is your personal antidote to the collective delusion. Finally, and perhaps most crucially, cultivate emotional discipline and a long-term perspective. Markets are inherently emotional, driven by fear and greed. Bubbles are born of greed and burst from fear. Your ability to detach emotionally from the daily gyrations, to stick to your well-thought-out plan, and to recognize that market cycles are a fundamental, unavoidable feature of capitalism will be your most potent defense. Do not let panic force you into selling at the bottom, nor let euphoria tempt you into chasing assets at unsustainable peaks. Remember that real wealth is built over decades, not days. The catastrophic consequences we discussed earlier are often magnified by individual irrational reactions. So, while the world frets about the next financial bubble, and the talking heads on cable news try to monetize every market tremor, you, armed with these decidedly unglamorous but profoundly effective strategies, can stand apart. You can navigate the uncertainty, not by predicting the unpredictable, but by preparing for the inevitable. It is not about escaping the storm entirely, for storms will always come. It is about having a sturdy boat, a compass, and the wisdom to know when to batten down the hatches and when to set sail. Safeguard your wealth, yes, but more importantly, safeguard your common sense. It is a far rarer commodity.
Your portfolio's fate. Will you be the bubble's next punchline?
So we have journeyed through the unsettling landscape of potential financial bubbles. It's pointed out the glaringly obvious, yet conveniently ignored economic indicators, and dusted off the eerie historical parallels that suggest humanity is not quite as adept at learning from its past mistakes as it might imagine. We have even contemplated the truly catastrophic consequences that arise when these speculative edifices inevitably collapse, transforming paper fortunes into tragic cautionary tales. The uncomfortable truth, as always, is that the signs are rarely hidden. They are simply dismissed, rationalized, or drowned out by the siren song of easy money and the fear of missing out. But here is where the narrative shifts from grim observation to empowering action. While the financial world, in its infinite wisdom, often insists on repeating its most expensive blunders, you, dear viewer, are not condemned to be a mere casualty. You possess the most potent weapon against market madness: knowledge, paired with a healthy dose of skepticism and disciplined action. The boring strategies of diversification, maintaining a strategic cash reserve, diligently reducing high-interest debt, and committing to continuous learning are not just academic exercises. They are the unglamorous, yet extraordinarily effective battle armor against the inevitable market volatility. To ignore them is not optimism. It is a willful and potentially very costly gamble on collective delusion. Therefore, as the current economic play unfolds, with its high valuations and speculative fervor, the choice, as always, rests with you. Will you succumb to the widespread amnesia and the intoxicating lure of this time it is different? Or will you utilize the insights gleaned from history and present-day indicators to fortify your financial position, Prepare for the eventual storm and perhaps even emerge stronger on the other side. The market will continue its unpredictable dance, but your preparation determines whether you are swept away by the current or navigate it with deliberate intent. Make your next financial move a smart one. This dive into the delightful world of financial bubbles and their aftermath has provided you with even a shred of valuable insight. Do not keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with anyone who still thinks gravity does not apply to their portfolio. Certainly subscribe to our channel for more brutally honest takes on finance. And please leave a comment below with your thoughts. Are we in a bubble, or is everyone just being dramatic? Your input helps us all, or at least gives me more material for my next sardonic monologue.